Here are the top stories for today, November 4, 2020. Sorsogon steps up after typhoon clearing operations. DSWD Secretary Rolando Bautista assures that funds are available for relief efforts. 5,000 workers will be hired to clean up Catanduanes streets. And Bataan continues its pre-registration for National ID system. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. The wrath of Super Typhoon Rolly was felt in the Bicol region, including Sorsogon. Governor Francis CHIZ ESCUDERO reported that the damage caused by Typhoon Rolly in the province amounts to 200 million pesos, while the havoc wrought by Typhoon Quinta is at 120 million pesos. Measures are already in place for road clearing in Sorsogon and nearby provinces.
Matapos ng unang araw na tinamaan kami ng bagyo, alas 4 hanggang alas 9 ng umaga o humigit kumulang 5 oras, by lunchtime po na-cleared na ng aming mga kalye. Humigit kumulang 20 poste lamang ang natumba at na-restore na rin po yung mga poste. Bago natapos yung araw na yun, November 1, inaasahan po namin na babalik yung kuryente namin pinakamaaga mula sa Bacman Geothermal Power Plant ng Huwebes o bukas, o hindi man pinakamatagal na ayon sa NJCP dahil wala naman pong problema ang aming distribution lines sa November 10. Passable po, November 1 pa lamang lahat po ng aming mga national at provincial roads. 10 team po ang binuo namin na clearing teams para sa mga kalye na binubuo ng DPWH, AFP, PNP, Provincial Disaster Risk Reduction Management Office. At gayon din, hindi ko pa binibilang yung sa mga LGUs. So, sa kabuuan, mahigit 25 clearing teams ang meron po kami sa buong lalawigan. Rason para makalipas lamang ang 4 hanggang 6 na oras ay na-clear na po namin agad lahat ng kalye.
Meanwhile, Social Welfare Secretary Rolando Bautista assures that standby funds are available for relief efforts.
Ang DSWD ay nakapagbigay na ng tulong na nagkakahalaga ng 8.3 million na peso sa mga apektadong pamilya. Ang tulong na ito ay binubuo ng family food packs at mga food at non-food items. Yung Secraki, bukod dito, nagsasagawa rin tayo ng psychosocial first aid intervention sa mga apektadong pamilya, katuwang ang Department of Health at ang pribadong sektor. Sapat ang pondo ng DSWD para sa pagtugon sa kalamidad. Base sa ating pinakahuling report, ang DSWD, ang ating mga field offices, at ang National Resource Operations Center ay mayroong nakahandang stockpiles at standby funds. Ito na yung suma total na nagkakahalaga ng higit sa 866 milyong piso. Sa standby funds, mayroon higit 281.2 million piso. Standby funds ang DSWD, Central Office at Field Offices. Sa nasabing halaga, 239.7 million ay magagamit bilang Quick Response Funds o QRF sa Central Office. Ito po yung, kasi pinabi po natin standby funds, ito po in a form of cash na pwede po nating ibaba sa mga nangangailangan ng mga field offices.
Funds are in place for local government units whose calamity funds are already depleted due to COVID-19 and Typhoon Rolly. Presidential spokesperson ROQUE said LGUs can request for additional funds from the quick response funds of other government agencies. He said the national government still has 3.6 billion pesos worth of calamity funds taken from the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act or Bayanihan 2. This remaining fund will be used to help those affected by the super typhoon.
Meron po tayong 3 billion plus pondo sa NDRRMC Bagamat hindi po diretsong marireplenish ng national government ang calamity fund ng local governments, pwede po silang mag-request ng augmentation sa mga ahensya na merong quick reaction fund gaya ng OCD, DSWD, DOH, DA, DPWH, DEPED, NEA. So pwede po nilang lapitan yung mga regional offices ng mga ahensyang ito and to request for replenishment of their calamity fund.
Senator Christopher Bongo is battling for the passage of the bill creating the Department of Disaster Resilience, or DDR. Senator Go said that the DDR shall provide a clearer chain of command, more responsive mechanisms, and a more holistic, proactive approach in handling crisis situations in the country. He added that through this new department, interagency coordination can be streamlined and will be made more responsive to the changing times. For Albay Representative Joey Salceda, principal author of the bill, the proposal does not merely create an agency, but it also institutionalizes disaster preparedness, response, and future proofing as a national responsibility with an institutionalized framework. He said the head of disaster preparedness should be able to propose measures straight within the cabinet and towards the president, and that the government can find the funds for the new agency. The United States and Australia have mobilized humanitarian assistance to the Philippines to help in its recovery efforts. The U.S. Embassy in Manila said about 35 trucks were provided to the government to assist in the delivery of supplies. Meanwhile, Australian Ambassador to the Philippines Stephen Robinson said Canberra has also provided emergency shelter kits through the Philippine Red Cross. China also expressed its readiness to join the government's recovery efforts to help those affected by the typhoon, while Turkey's foreign ministry extended its condolences to the relatives of the victims and people of the Philippines affected by the typhoon. The Communist Party of the Philippines and its armed wing, the New People's Army, have legal fronts. This is reiterated by Malacanang after Amnesty International urged the government to end the alleged practice of red tagging and to publicly instruct government officials to refrain from harassing and intimidating activists. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said it would be hypocrisy for the CPP-NPA to say they don't have any legal fronts.
Ang CPP-NPA po, talaga meron silang revolutionary armed struggle, yan po yung NPA, at meron silang political, pero kabahagi pa rin po ng CPP-NPA. At hindi po madidinayan, kaplastikan po ng CPP-NPA kung sasabihin nila wala silang mga legal fronts na tinatawag.
Meanwhile, National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon Jr. identified some legal fronts of the CPP-NPA. These are the Alliance of Concerned Teachers, League of Filipino Students, Anak Bayan, College Editors Guild of the Philippines, and the National Union of People's Lawyers. The CPP-NPA is listed as a terrorist organization by the United States, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the Philippines. Investigation is underway on the maltreatment case of former Philippine Ambassador to Brazil, Marichu Mauro. Malacanang said it is confident that the fact-finding team created by the Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, will conduct a fair and transparent probe. Mauro arrived in Manila on Monday night following a recall order from Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. The embattled diplomat was caught on CCTV footage assaulting her Filipino helper multiple times inside the diplomatic residence in Brazil. The panel is expected to submit an initial report to Locsin within 13 days, whose recommendation will then be forwarded to the President. Interior Secretary Eduardo Año confirmed that he already submitted to President Rodrigo Duterte his recommendation for the next chief of the Philippine National Police, or PNP. Año said he had identified 3 senior PNP official candidates but cannot disclose their names and ranks as of the moment. The current PNP Chief, Lieutenant General Camilo Cascolan, is set to reach the mandatory retirement age of 56 on November 10. Cascolan was appointed by the President to the top police post last September. President Rodrigo Duterte is set to announce his final decision soon.
I'm sure he has a shortlist already, but the final choice, it's up to the President when he will issue it.
Still to come, 5,000 workers will be hired to clean up Catanduanes streets, and Western Visayas is on its way to economic recovery. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Alamin kung paano ang tamang pagsusuot ng surgical mask. Una, hawakan ang mask sa strap at siguruhing natatakpan nito ang inyong bibig at ilong. Tandaan, ang may kulay na bahagi ng mask ang dapat nasa labas. Ito lamang ang tamang paraan ng pagsuot nito. Ihulma ang nose piece o maliit na metallic strip ayon sa hugis ng inyong ilong. Iwasan ang paghawak sa inyong ilong at bibig. Kung marumi na ang mask, hubarin ito gamit ang strap at itapon ito sa isang basurahan. Siguruhin ang maayos na paghuhugas ng kamay gamit ang sabon at tubig. Ang surgical mask ay dapat gamitin ng mga pasyenteng may sakit sa baga o mga taong mayroong ubo, sipon at lagnat, mga nag-aalaga sa mga may sakit, at mga healthcare at frontline workers. Maaari ring magsuot nito kung kayo ay pupunta sa matataong lugar. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. President Rodrigo Duterte still has the last say on whether to hold face-to-face classes, although concerned agencies continuously monitor developments as they prepare for its eventual resumption. Presidential spokesperson ROQUE said the Department of Education is looking into the actual condition of the COVID-19 pandemic in different parts of the country. Citing the Department of Health, ROQUE said the government aims to bring all regions under the modified general community quarantine, the most relaxed classification out of the 4 community quarantines in the Philippines. Last month, DEPED started its preparation for the limited face-to-face classes in areas with no reported COVID-19 infections. Meanwhile, the DepEd reported that 226 public schools and over 7,000 learning materials were damaged during the onslaught of Super Typhoon Rolly. The damaged schools are under 26 divisions in Ilocos Region, Cagayan Valley, Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Bicol, Eastern Visayas, and Cordillera Administrative Region or CAR. Reconstruction and rehabilitation for these damaged infrastructures is estimated at 489.5 million pesos. Nearly 15,000 learners sought refuge in public schools that were used as evacuation centers. Apart from activating its disaster risk reduction and management service teams in the affected regions, the DepEd has directed its field offices to closely coordinate with local government units for local interagency action since October 31. Government agencies are set to implement measures to provide relief for Filipinos affected by the previous typhoons on top of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. More on this from Janice Cabe.
The Department of Labor and Employment plans to hire some 5,000 informal sector workers to help clean up the streets of Catanduanes after the onslaught of Super Typhoon Rolly. The hiring of workers under the TUPAD program was the response of Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III on the request of Catanduanes Governor Joseph Cua. Cua said there is a need to hire employees to clean the debris left behind by the typhoon to facilitate the delivery of relief goods to be able to enter the province. TUPAD beneficiaries are given emergency employment and are paid the minimum wage prevailing in their respective areas. Meanwhile, the Department of Agriculture through the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation has a 1 billion peso available indemnification fund to pay for the losses incurred by farmers following the onslaught of typhoons Rolly and Quinta. The Agricultural Credit Policy Council will also provide those affected by the calamity with 25,000 pesos from their Survival and Recovery Loan Program. DA's Quick Response Fund also maintains some 400 million pesos which farmers can avail by presenting their damage reports. As of noon of November 3, DA recorded some 2.56 billion peso losses in the agriculture industry. In other news, the National Housing Authority has approved a 2-month suspension of amortization or lease payments from residential account holders in all existing housing projects. NHA General Manager Marcelino Escalada Jr. said the suspension of amortization also covers commercial, industrial, and institutional accounts. Escalada said the NHA targets to help its member beneficiaries and awardees ease the impact of the pandemic and help them recover from the challenges brought by the crisis. Under the memorandum, the moratorium will cover payments from November 1 to December 31, 2020, while the payment resumption will begin on January 1, 2021. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Janice Cave.
The Quezon City government has started implementing a mandatory bike helmet ordinance, with its personnel starting to apprehend riders not wearing helmets. Violators of the bike helmet policy will be fined 300 pesos for the first offense, 500 for the second offense, and 1,000 for the third offense. Meanwhile, the city government has given free helmets to those who were apprehended. The city also reminded all bicycle riders to strictly follow the rules to assure their safety. The ordinance was scheduled to be implemented on October 15, but was moved to October 31 after residents raised concerns that individuals have prioritized food and health needs over helmets amid the pandemic. Meanwhile, the city government is set to assist around 615 families who were affected by a fire in Santa Mesa, Manila on Monday. Manila Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Dumagoso assured the people that the city government will do its best to implement the minimum health protocols in the different evacuation sites. On Wednesday, city personnel were expected to distribute assistance, including building materials, so that fire victims can start rebuilding their houses. Earlier on Monday night, Dumagoso visited the fire victims to personally check on their situation and assess their needs. The fire victims took shelter in several evacuation sites, including the Hipodromo Covered Court and the Polytechnic University of the Philippines Covered Court. The Department of Foreign Affairs wrapped up its 8th month of COVID-19 related repatriation efforts as it brought home over 37,000 overseas Filipinos the month of October. This brings the total number of repatriated Filipinos to over 237,000 since the outbreak of the pandemic. October's repatriations were marked by several firsts, starting with a mass repatriation of more than 500 agro-studies students from Israel, the return of 92 overseas workers from Benghazi, Libya, and the first ever repatriation by sea from Indonesia of over 40 fishermen via the VRP to Bataha. The DFA also chartered 3 flights from Jeddah and Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which flew home 920 Filipinos. It also facilitated several medical repatriations from Australia, Brazil, French Polynesia, Hungary, Italy, Japan, Norway, Oman, Spain, and the USA. The DFA expects to repatriate more than 107,000 Filipinos by the year end. A business leader in Negros Occidental said signals are good for Western Visayas as the region is on its way to economic recovery. According to Frank Carbon, Chief Executive Officer of Metro Bacolod Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Western Visayas is now open for business with the resumption of passenger and cargo ferry service operations between Bacolod and Iloilo City. Carbon said traders in the region have committed to restart their trading activities, while hotels in Bacolod are now ready to accept guests. Sipalay City, one of the major tourism destinations in Negros Occidental, will reopen to tourists this week, as well as Bacolod City, where the number of COVID-19 cases decrease. Small enterprises in the region have also started to avail of loan programs from the Development Bank of the Philippines and the Land Bank of the Philippines. Up next, Bataan continues its pre-registration for National ID system. And MMDA will close another U-turn slot in EDSA. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Alamin ang tamang paraan ng pag-ubo upang mapigilan ang paglaganap ng Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ugaliing magdala ng panyo o tissue. Kung uubo o babahing, takpan ang buong ilong at bibig gamit ang panyo o tissue. Kung walang dalang panyo o tissue, maaaring gamitin ang braso na pantakip. Kung nakararamdam na kailangan umubo o bumahing, agad na dumistansya sa mga tao sa paligid. Huwag dumura kung saan-saan, gumamit ng tissue at itapon sa basurahan. Ugaliin ang paghuhugas ng kamay at paggamit ng alcohol o hand sanitizer upang mamatay ang mikrobyo. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
The Philippine Statistics Authority continued the pre-registration of selected individuals in Bataan under the Philippine Identification System or PhilSys, more known as the National ID System. In Samal Town, the PSA reports about 7,000 applicants from its 14 barangays. Selected pre-listed applicants are asked to give their address, date, and place of birth, marital status, and contact numbers. The applicant would be interviewed by appointment for more information and biometrics such as fingerprints, iris scan, and front-facing photo. PSA Supervisor Michael Alegre said they began the pre-registration in Sama last October 12, and this would run until December 31. During the final registration in January 2021, 4 applications would be processed every hour as health protocols need to be followed, such as the disinfection of the machines. AMBUKLAO and Binga dams released water as levels rose despite spilling operations in the aftermath of Super Typhoon Rolly. Pag-asa says the rise meant the water from Rolly downpour continues flowing into these dams. The dams were spilling to balance water inflow and outflow and maintain a level that will not compromise the facility structure. As of November 4 at 6 a.m., water level in Ambuklao and Binga dams on Tuesday at 751.20 meters and 574.58 meters respectively. According to Pag-asa, the dams released water on November 1 and 2. Spilling operations of Ambuklao and Binga dams continued on Tuesday. A gate of Ambuklao and 2 gates of Binga were opened to accommodate the spilling operations. Volunteer linemen from different parts of Luzon and Visayas are ready to be deployed to the Bicol region, which was hard hit by Super Typhoon Rolly. Energy Undersecretary Felix William Fuentabella said these task force kapatid teams that will be going to Bicol are from Ilocos region, Cagayan Valley, Central Luzon, and Western and Eastern Visayas. For Catanduanes, Fuentabella said they need a more detailed discussion with the local government and the Office of Civil Defense to assess the situation in the area. The local government unit of Catanduanes estimated that 90% of energy infrastructures in the province were damaged by Rolly. Fuentabella said the estimated damage to energy infrastructure in Catanduanes is around 254 million pesos. Meanwhile, the Department of Health reported that 6 health facilities in Bicol were partially damaged during the onslaught of Super Typhoon Rolly. These facilities are 4 DOH-retained hospitals and laboratories and 2 local government unit hospitals. The DOH, however, assures these remain functional. As for mega temporary treatment and monitoring facilities, the DOH said over 300 patients and staff were transferred to the nearest hotels. The 27th World Travel Awards recognized the Philippines as Asia's leading beach destination and Asia's leading dive destination in 2020. The award-giving body also declared the Department of Tourism as this year's leading tourist board in Asia, besting 11 nominated countries. This is the Philippines' fourth time to win Asia's leading beach destination and the second time to win Asia's leading dive destination, following a number of nominations for categories since 2006. On the other hand, this is the second time for the DOT to win Asia's leading tourist board. Recently, the DOT expressed its support for the gradual reopening of various tourism destinations in the country. Among the open destinations for local tourists are Baguio, Boracay, El Nido, Ilocos Norte, and several diving sites in Batangas province wherein stringent safety protocols are in place. Here is the latest in our community billboard. Another U-turn slot along EDSA will soon be closed to allow city buses and emergency vehicles exclusive access to its two innermost lanes. The Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, or MMDA, said the U-turn slot near Dario Bridge in Quezon City will be closed to both northbound and southbound traffic beginning Monday, November 9. It advised northbound motorists that want to head back south to take the U-turn slot near Oliveras Drive in front of a Shell gas station. For southbound motorists that want to head north, it said they may instead take the U-turn slot at EDSA Quezon Avenue flyover. The Dario Bridge U-turn will be the fourth U-turn slot that the MMDA will close for the EDSA busway project. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. Sorsogon steps up after typhoon clearing operations. DSWD Secretary Rolando Bautista assures that funds are available for relief efforts. 5,000 workers will be hired to clean up Catanduanes streets. And Bataan continues its pre-registration for National ID system. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, I am William Theo. Good day and stay safe, everyone.